Welcome to MHS Midnight Horror Stories. I know that many of you choose to watch videos on this channel to relax and ease yourself into sleep. That's why we've included calming background music after 10 horror stories, helping you drift off more comfortably. If you enjoy the content on this channel, don't forget to support us by leaving a like or drop a comment letting us know where you're listening from and what time it is for you. Your support means everything to us and is the biggest motivation for this channel to keep growing. And now, let's step together into tonight's terrifying stories. 2 years ago, it was New Year's Eve. While the rest of the world was counting down to a new beginning, I was counting down the final days of my life. My name is Harry, and I live in San Antonio, Texas. My home was a rundown apartment complex. In that neighborhood, the sounds of police sirens and people screaming in the street were normal. But the chaos outside was nothing compared to the mess inside me. My fiancée had left me after she suffered a miscarriage. I was drowning in drug addiction and deep depression. At that time, I wasn't afraid of dying. In fact, I felt like I had been dead for a long time already. My rare moment of silence was ruined by a new neighbor living upstairs. From 6 in the morning until late at night, loud music pounded through my ceiling like a hammer. It seemed like he was throwing a massive New Year's party. I could hear fireworks exploding and beer bottles smashing right outside my door. By 1 a.m., my patience finally snapped. As a man who felt he had nothing left to lose, I decided to go upstairs to talk to them. When the door opened, I tried to be polite. I simply asked them to turn the music down a little bit, but the neighbor immediately lost his temper. He started cursing at me and yelled, "Mind your own business, you jerk!" I tried to stay calm, but we ended up arguing. Suddenly, the man lunged at me. He grabbed my shirt and slammed me against the wall. I reacted in self-defense by grabbing his neck to push him away. During the struggle, I felt something hard at his waist. In that exact moment, he pulled a gun out of his pocket and pointed it at me. Bang, bang. The deafening noise tore through the narrow hallway. A strange numbness hit me even before the pain started. I panicked and scrambled down the stairs. I stumbled back into my apartment and locked the door tight. I sat on the floor, shaking uncontrollably. That was when I saw the blood soaking through my shirt. One bullet had hit me just below my right chest, and another had grazed my right arm. The metallic smell of blood filled the air. I was bleeding to death. I struggled to reach my phone to call 911, but I was gasping for air because I was losing so much blood. 1125 South Main Street. Someone's been shot. I only managed to say those few words before I collapsed onto the cold floor. My body felt paralyzed, and my vision began to fade to black. In that moment, I truly thought I was going to die. But in my last few seconds of consciousness, I made a vow to God. I promised that if I lived, I would fix all my mistakes. I would get clean and rebuild my life. Everything I learned next came from the doctors and the police. First responders arrived at the scene in less than 10 minutes. They had to break down my door to save me. They found me unconscious on the floor. My face was white from blood loss, and my pulse was so weak it was almost gone. Just a few hours later, the police found the neighbor who shot me. He was only a few blocks away. When they tried to stop him, he pulled his gun and tried to have a shootout with the officers. The police shot and killed him on the spot. I survived, but the damage was severe. One bullet passed very close to my heart and caused my lung to collapse. The doctor told me that if help had been just a few minutes later, I wouldn't have made it. Those words still haunt me today. My recovery was a long and brutal journey. I had to heal my body, but I also had to fight the darkness in my mind. After I left the hospital, I pulled myself out of the hole by joining AA and NA support groups. Every single day was a battle. but I refused to give up on myself. 1 year later, I achieved something that used to seem impossible. I was completely sober. I started volunteering at a rehab center, listening to people who felt as hopeless as I once did. Eventually, they trusted me enough to give me a full-time job. For the first time in years, I felt like my life had a purpose. At the center, I met a wonderful nurse. She always treated me with respect and kindness. We started dating, and now I'm preparing to marry her next spring. Several years have passed, but I still get a chill down my spine when I remember that night. I never thought I would be alive to start over, but I got lucky. Now, I treasure every single day that I am loved and truly alive. I am not telling this story to brag about surviving. I am telling it so you know one thing. Even when you are in the deepest part of hell, and even if you have given up on yourself, life can still give you a second chance in the most intense way possible. My name is David. I am an ordinary office worker living and working in Seattle. My job is a boring cycle of numbers and meetings. It keeps my mind very stressed. Last year, I decided to treat myself to a short vacation. I wanted to get away from the noise and the busy city life. I wanted a place that felt different and nostalgic. I chose the Drake Hotel in Chicago. I saw pictures of it online and was impressed by its old appearance and elegant architecture. It has a very famous reputation. Website described the Drake as a historic icon. It promised a formal and peaceful atmosphere for the end of the year. I thought this was where I would find some true quiet. I arrived to check in on the afternoon of December 31st. The receptionist greeted me warmly, even though they were very busy preparing for New Year's Eve. The atmosphere in the lobby was very formal. Every decoration followed a classic style from the early 20th century. I felt like I was stepping into a history book. I stayed on the 9th floor. My room was small but cozy and decorated in a vintage style. After dinner, I decided to walk around the hotel to admire the architecture. The hotel was completely ready for the biggest event of the year. I walked into the Gold Coast ballroom. The room was huge with a very high ceiling. Crystal chandeliers sparkled and reflected light onto the shiny wooden floors. As I stood in the middle of the floor, I suddenly felt a strange chill down my spine. The temperature seemed to drop several degrees compared to the hallway outside. The air felt thick and unusually gloomy. I shivered, but I tried to stay calm. I thought it was just a cold draft. Right then, at the far end of the room, I saw a flash of red. It was a woman in a flowing red silk dress. She disappeared so fast that I barely had time to think. I wondered to myself, which guest would dress in such a classic, old-fashioned way? After I finished looking at the ballroom, I was heading back to my room. Suddenly, I heard someone crying. The sound was faint but clear. It echoed from the emergency stairs near the hallway leading to the 10th floor. My heart started beating fast. The crying sounded like she was in deep pain. I followed the sound out of curiosity. When I got close to the stairs, I froze. I saw a woman wearing a classic red silk dress. She was standing at the top of the stairs with her face in her hands, sobbing loudly. Her shoulders shook with every breath. I realized this was the same woman I had seen in the ballroom. "Miss, can I help you?" I asked. My voice was a little shaky. She did not answer. Instead, she suddenly turned her back and ran up the stairs toward the roof. She moved at a speed that a normal person could hardly match. Only one thought went through my head. She is going to commit suicide. I ran as fast as I could after her and called out loud, but she just kept gliding away. When my hand touched the door handle leading to the roof, the figure in red vanished right before my eyes. In a split second, The area became so silent that I could hear the blood pumping in my ears. At that exact moment, the large clock began to strike midnight for New Year's Eve. In the distance, bright fireworks exploded over the Chicago sky. The colorful lights reflected off the lake, but in that moment, the world around me was terrifyingly still, as if time had stopped. I could only hear my own heart racing in the cold, empty space. I panicked and ran down to the reception desk. My head was spinning. I told the staff everything that had happened. I was out of breath and stuttering. The receptionist looked at me calmly. She didn't look surprised or worried at all. She simply nodded and answered in a flat voice, "Yes, sir. We will have someone look into it. That actually happens quite often this time of year." Her reaction made me feel very uncomfortable. How could they be so calm? I went back to my room feeling confused and annoyed by her indifferent attitude. I couldn't sleep at all that night. The image of the woman in the red dress and her desperate crying kept playing in my mind. I opened my phone and searched for information about the Drake Hotel. The top search results showed an old article about a tragedy that happened at the Drake. On New Year's Eve in 1920, it was the grand opening night of the hotel. During the fancy party in the Gold Coast Ballroom, a young woman in a bright red dress caught her fiancé with another woman. In her grief and total despair, she ran straight to the roof. She jumped off at the exact moment the New Year's fireworks exploded. The story didn't end there. Since that tragic event, many supernatural sightings of her spirit have been reported. The woman in red, or the Red Lady, appears in the Gold Coast Ballroom, on the 10th floor, and on the roof. People often hear a woman crying, especially on New Year's Eve. Her soul is said to be cursed to repeat her final night, searching for peace for the tragic, final chapter of her life. That was when I finally understood. The receptionist wasn't being rude or lazy. She had heard about this tragedy so many times that it had simply become a part of her job. I never used to believe in ghosts or spirits, but I swear that what I witnessed that night was real. I went back nearly 20 years to tell you this story. It was the fall, close to Halloween, and I was going on a camping trip with my ex-boyfriend and 3 of his friends. Even though I'd met his friends before, I still felt like it would be awkward to be the only girl with 4 guys for 3 nights. I ended up just going for it and decided to join because they picked a great spot. We'd hang around the fire, grill out, and drink some beers. The place they chose was great. I'm not even exaggerating. There was a waterfall just below one of the trails, so we had drinking water and cleaning water whenever we wanted. We set up our tents near a group of trails that came together so we could hike easily. My boyfriend's friends were funny, polite, and most importantly, gave me privacy when I needed it. No one drank too much the night before, so we were all pretty fresh and ready to hike a few miles the next day. After we finished, we grilled more food and had a few more beers. Right after we wrapped up for the day, before heading into the tents, my boyfriend asked me to put the cooler and the stereo into his pickup truck while he put out the fire and gathered the trash. I did as he asked, then put the truck keys in the front pocket of his backpack. The backpack was placed on the far side of the tent from the door. My ex-boyfriend would sleep closest to the door, and he had his gun for protection in case something crazy happened. We slept great that night. When we looked outside the next morning, it was pure chaos. The campfire was out, but the ring of stones that had been so carefully placed the night before was now scattered everywhere. White ashes covered the ground. The heavy grilling grate was on the ground. The truck was what was really awful. Both doors were wide open. The stereo was ripped out of the dashboard with wires hanging out. The speakers were shattered on the ground. The leather seats were ripped open, and the stuffing was coming out. The cooler was tipped over, and water made a huge puddle. Raw beef was torn up. splattered all over the hood and windshield. Dark red streaks of blood were running down like someone had painted them on. We tried to figure out what happened and how our campsite got destroyed without anyone hearing anything. A discussion quickly escalated into accusations. My ex-boyfriend accused me of not locking the truck the night before, which made me so angry because I swore to God I locked his damn truck. Then, he went straight to the tent, got his bag, but there were no keys in the front pocket, and it escalated from there. My boyfriend said, "Are you that stupid?" and started demanding that I apologize. I was genuinely so confused. I don't know if you've ever had that feeling where you're really losing your mind, but it's not fun. I walked over to my boyfriend's truck and found the keys lying near it. I just kept stammering, unable to form words. My boyfriend got silent, saying he just wanted to leave, and after apologizing to his friends, we threw what was left into the trunk and quickly got out of there. The ride home was so strange. I felt like I was going crazy. I kept apologizing and begging him to believe that I was sure I had locked the truck. He stayed silent for a long time until I started crying, at which point he said things like, "I know, I'm sorry, I believe you." That didn't make me feel better because it still didn't answer the question of what the hell happened. I kept asking my boyfriend what he thought happened because he had more camping experience than I did. He kept repeating that he didn't know. It got pretty tense, and we had to pull into a diner parking lot to take a break and talk it out. We stopped at an original Pancake House restaurant. My boyfriend hesitated, trying to find the words to say. When I urged him, he said that I would think he was crazy if he told me what he was thinking. I reassured him that nothing could be stranger than the feeling I had when I found the missing keys at the campsite. After a moment of silence, he finally started talking. He said he had a strange dream the night before, not exactly a nightmare, but enough to make him wake up with a jolt. When he woke up, it was completely quiet outside the tent, so he went back to sleep. At the time, he thought it was just because he drank a little too much and was tired from the hike. It wasn't until I panicked about not finding the keys in his bag that he started to pay attention to that dream. I urged him to be clear, and then he started to recount what he saw in his dream. He said he dreamed he woke up in the tent, with me lying next to him, but then he realized someone was standing hunched right over him, with their feet on either side of his sleeping bag. At first, he was scared, but when he looked closely at the face, it didn't look like a human face, but like it was made of ski mask material. Right after that, he woke up, chuckled to himself, thinking it was just a bad dream, and went back to sleep. We were silent for a moment, and then apologized to each other before getting back on the road. We were both tired, scared, and confused, so the ride home was quiet. I got home, showered, and fell asleep. We had a silent agreement that we would talk later, but when I called him at the end of the day, he just said that he had talked to his friends and that they had decided it was best to just forget about it. I was stunned by what I had just heard. They didn't want to file a police report or contact the park ranger or any authority. My ex-boyfriend said no one could help anyway, so the only way was to try to forget about it. I really couldn't believe it. My ex-boyfriend was super particular about his truck, and he always kept up with the insurance payments. But to file a claim, he'd have to file a police report. He loved that truck, and it was everything to him, so I really thought that the whole insurance claim thing would make him change his mind, but it didn't. I have my own theories as to why, and they all circle around one repeating theme, which is that I think my ex-boyfriend was the one who destroyed the campsite that night. I don't know if you could describe it as a blackout state or something, but I think he did more than just wake up from a bad dream in the middle of the night. He might even remember everything, but I think at the time, the idea of admitting that he had a hazy memory of smashing his own stereo was impossible. That's why he didn't want to revisit that night in any way. He didn't want his friends talking about it, and especially didn't want me talking to them about it. He knew we'd eventually find out the truth. I don't think he really cared about the smashed stereo, but he did care a lot about what his friends thought of him. We broke up less than a year later, and really, the camping incident was a small contributing factor. I'm not sure about all that happened. They are just my theories. As far as I know, my ex-boyfriend never went camping again. My name is Sarah. I'm 23 years old and I'm a senior in college. I've been working the night shift at the McDonald's on Maple Avenue to help pay for my living expenses. The job isn't too tough, and I figured I'd stick with it for a while until... At first it was just small creaks and scuttling noises. They were easy to ignore because I thought it was just the old ventilation system. But slowly, they started getting louder and clearer. I remember the first night, I realized something was really wrong. I was cleaning the dining area around 2 a.m. The store had been closed for an hour. Then I heard footsteps in the kitchen. It wasn't the sound of pots and pans or silverware. I froze. A chill ran from the back of my neck all the way down my spine. I tried to listen. It took me a few seconds to gather enough courage to say, "Is anyone there?" The only answer was heavy silence. I told myself it was just my imagination, or maybe a mouse. I knocked on the manager's office door. His name was Mike. "I swear there's someone in the kitchen area," I whispered. Mike looked up from a stack of forms and frowned. "Sarah, have you been watching horror movies again? Nobody can get in after we close." He had a lot of work to do, but he still came with me to check the whole store. We didn't find anything strange. After that night, I started noticing strange things. Boxes of fries were missing, even though I was sure I had counted them all. A mayonnaise bottle was open, and nobody claimed to have used it. The strange noises kept getting louder, especially when I was working alone. I looked up at the ceiling, wondering if someone could climb up there and move around in the small space between the ceiling and the roof. The thought was crazy, but I couldn't get it out of my head. A month went by, and things got worse. Even though no one else seemed to notice, I felt like I was being watched. Even when the store was crowded, I felt an invisible presence. Sometimes I'd even see the ceiling tiles shift or a shadow flit across the gaps. I couldn't focus on my job. I was irritable, panicked, and exhausted. I stayed up all night searching online for strange break-ins at fast food restaurants. While I didn't find anything exactly like my situation, I did come across a few small stories and articles about stolen food, weird noises, and signs that people were getting into stores after closing. I told Mike about it again, but he thought I was overreacting. "Sarah, if someone broke in, the cameras would catch them." But the cameras only covered the cash registers and the front door, not the kitchen or the ceiling. One night, as I was changing after my shift, I saw a small crack in the ceiling right above my locker. I was sure it hadn't been there at the start of my shift. A cold feeling ran through my body. I snapped a picture of it and then left. The next night, I came in early and checked. The crack was gone, but I had the photo. I hadn't imagined it. I decided to investigate on my own. That night, after Mike left, I hid in the employee break room with the lights off. My phone was set to record video. I sat there for almost an hour, trying not to move, breathing as quietly as possible. The first sound came, a soft creak, like someone was moving very carefully on old wooden floorboards. Then another sound. They were getting closer. My heart started beating faster and faster. The ceiling tile directly above me began to shake, as if something was pressing on it. At the same time, the next ceiling tile did too. Whatever was up there was moving toward me. I forgot my plan and the phone that was recording. Fear made me jump up. I ran to my car as fast as I could, started it, and sped out of the parking lot. In my rearview mirror, the McDonald's store still had its lights on inside. And I swear, just as I turned onto the main road, I saw a figure standing inside, looking out. It was a very tall shadow. I didn't go back to work the next night. Mike called me. "Sarah, you need to explain yourself. What happened that night? You left the store wide open. The security camera caught you running like you were being chased by a ghost." "Mike, there's someone in the ceiling." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I thought he would laugh at me, but when he spoke, his voice was different, tense and worried. The next day, 2 police officers checked the store but didn't find anything unusual. There were no signs of a break-in or anyone living in the ceiling. They thought it might be animals and promised to send someone to check the roof, but I felt like they didn't really believe what I was saying. I put in my notice and quit my job. I tried to forget about it, focusing on my studies and finding another job. 2 months later, as I was watching the evening news, I noticed a small story about a man who had been arrested for breaking into a McDonald's in Greenfield, about 30 miles from me. He had been living in the ceiling for several weeks, stealing food and creating a network of tunnels in the store. I froze when they showed his picture. Gaunt, sunken eyes, long, dirty hair. His name was Jeffrey Leeds, and according to the report, he had done this at least 6 McDonald's locations in the area. He claimed he was only eating and sleeping, but the police found notebooks in his backpack with the habits, names, and addresses of employees and photos taken from above. I tried to comfort myself, knowing Jeffrey Leeds had been caught. But then a terrifying thought popped into my head. If he could live in a McDonald's ceiling for weeks without anyone knowing, how many other people are doing that right now? How many ceiling people are watching us in stores, schools, offices, or even in our own homes? That night, I couldn't sleep. Lying in bed, I stared at my ceiling, listening to every creak, and wondered, am I really alone? I'm Lauren. Decided to be a single mom to raise my son, Baron. This horrific thing happened to my mom and my son 3 years ago, back when Baron was 6. It was early December and Christmas. The biggest holiday of the year was coming up. The streets were lit up with sparkling lights all over the fake Christmas trees along the sidewalks, making it feel all cozy, even in the cold. The busy tunes from the cafes and shops mixed with all the laughter from the shoppers. I took Baron out to grab some stuff and soak up the vibe. Inside the store, there were huge pine trees covered in lights and booths full of colorful gifts, making it feel like you were in some kind of holiday wonderland. My son and I headed out once the cart was full, and he was super hyped about the stuff we just got. At the entrance, we saw a Santa Claus guy, waving and looking all chill and friendly. Baron ran over all excited. Santa's gotta be every kid's favorite when Christmas rolls around. The kid gave Santa a friendly hello and grabbed his hand. I was pretty sure this was just a store employee. They really know how to grab people's attention and make them happy. I pushed the cart forward, gave a little smile and nod like I was saying hi. Santa smiled and asked Baron what he wanted for Christmas. An RC jet. I love it. It's so cool. Baron was totally pumped. I laughed a little, since that was actually the gift I was going to get him. You'll totally get the gift you want, for you're a good kid, right? Santa's compliments, along with the little reminder, made Baron nod. The way the guy acting like Santa talked was hilarious. He also asked how things were going for me as a single mom. At first, I was touched by the sympathy, but then it was clear I hadn't told him anything about myself, but he knew all about it. I smiled kinda shy and gave him a suspicious look. Hey, you ever heard that song about Santa kissing the mom on Christmas Eve, kid? He asked Baron, but his eyes, smile, and the whole vibe of the question were aimed at me. Before Baron could even react, and I was totally surprised, that Santa came up and kissed my hand all close-like. He didn't stop there, though. He tried to get even closer. I quickly stepped back and pulled my son away, feeling pretty frustrated. When I got to the parking lot, I looked back at the entrance, and that Santa was gone. Some people have such a weird attitude when it comes to customer service. Or is it just how people see things? I quickly shook off the thoughts about that Santa and started getting dinner ready for us. After dinner, we just kicked back in the living room, watching the Christmas special until it got pretty late. Out of nowhere, someone knocked on the door. I looked over, and then it knocked again. I told my son to stay put and walked over to the door. Honestly, I wasn't expecting anyone to show up at 10 at night. I didn't open the door, just stood a few steps back and asked, "Who's there?" I heard that familiar laugh, like in Christmas movies, and then he said, "It's Santa." Right away, Baron yelled and ran over, but I signaled him to chill and stay put. I asked him what he was doing here so late. This wasn't even the day for giving gifts to kids. Honestly, I was just trying to keep things cool for Baron, but I was pretty sure there was a scammer behind the door. The guy claiming to be Santa said he found something I dropped at Kroger this morning. So, it was that store employee my mom and I ran into earlier. I asked him what the item was, but he just gave me some vague, smart aleck answer. I don't know, but just open the door and I'll show you." "Thanks, but I didn't drop anything, and if I did, I wouldn't need it back." The guy clearly had no clue what I was talking about. He just kept going on about me opening the door and all the knocking. I made it clear again and told him I'd call the police if he stuck around for another 5 minutes. Eventually, he just left. I took Baron to the bedroom, and he wouldn't stop asking about Santa. I had no idea how to explain it to him. He'd totally freak out if I told him Santa wasn't real. The next morning, I called up Kroger's customer service to complain about their employees bugging me. But the info they gave me was wild. They said they don't have any employees dressed up as Santa at the entrance. I froze up, anxiety hitting me all at once. If he wasn't a store employee, then who the heck was he? My mind was all over the place with questions, and I couldn't focus the rest of the morning. I called the police right away and told them everything I could remember. They said they'd look into it and boost patrols around the area to keep things safe. I couldn't sleep that night. Every little sound freaked me out. I kept checking my windows and doors, feeling like something was watching me. A week later, the police called and said they caught some sketchy guy. He'd been reported for the same kind of harassment before, and turns out he had a record for burglary and trespassing too. After being grilled, he finally admitted to it. I was glad to hear he got arrested, but those cold eyes stuck with me for a long time. Baron was way too young to get what happened, but I figured I should teach him to be careful around strangers, even if they seemed friendly. That Christmas, we still put up the tree, swapped gifts, and made great memories with our son and family. But deep down, I kept reminding myself to stay on guard. The world's got its fair share of Christmas magic, but also some unexpected dangers. In every high school, there are the kids who fit in and the kids who are left out. I was just an average student, not popular, not invisible. Noah, the student this story is about, was definitely in the second group, and worse off than anyone I'd ever seen. Noah was a frequent target of bullying by everyone in school. He was known as a loner, quiet and without friends. With his thick-rimmed glasses, braces, and his haircut, he had the look of a typical nerd and was an easy mark for bullies. Overall, Noah was harmless, but that's what made him the most bullied kid in school. The situation seemed to get worse every year. At first, it was just harmless pranks like hiding Noah's books or calling him mocking nicknames. But then, things escalated. One time, I saw them shove Noah into a locker and lock the door until he had to beg to be let out. Another time, they poured milk over his head right in the middle of the cafeteria, and the whole lunchroom roared with laughter. Most recently, I heard Noah was shoved down the stairs and had to limp for a whole week. I once witnessed a terrible scene during lunch when a group of seniors was mentoring freshmen, continuing the cycle of bullying Noah like it was a tradition. No one dared to stand up for him because they were afraid of becoming the next target. However, that was when I decided to start defending Noah. This action severely damaged my own reputation, but I didn't care. I realized it made Noah's life a little easier, so I kept doing it. One day, I decided to leave my friends and sit with Noah for lunch. He had been sitting alone for years, and I wanted to change that. For the next 15 minutes, we talked casually, mostly about his physics homework and his comic books. While talking, he spoke about his comics, but not the superheroes who save people. Instead, he talked about villains, about Avengers. Noah said slowly, "People think the bad guys are cruel for no reason, but they're just people who have been pushed too far." The way he said it gave me the chills. Then Noah smiled faintly, a joyless smile, and placed his hand on the backpack next to him. I waited for the right moment and asked, "Hey Noah, how have people been treating you lately?" "I'm sick of them. Every single one of them," he said. I tried to calm him by asking, "Well, if some of them became your friends, it would be better, right? Do you consider me a friend?" Noah replied, "Of course. Friends share secrets, right?" I smiled, and Noah asked that I not reveal his secret to anyone. I froze for a few seconds and then nodded in agreement. "Okay, look in my backpack." I only saw it for a second before Noah zipped the bag shut, but I was sure of what I had just seen. I felt my chest tighten. My hands were shaking, but I quickly hid them under the table, trying to breathe normally. I swallowed hard. The dry feeling in my throat made it almost impossible to speak. I acted calm to ask the necessary questions. With every answer, I became more terrified of Noah. He said he planned to use it soon, not at a shooting range, but at school, targeting anyone who tried to stop him. Noah said all of this while remaining completely calm, as if he had been considering this for a long time. I suspected this might not be the first time Noah had brought a gun to school. When lunchtime ended, I told Noah I would see him later. I tried to walk away as calmly as possible. Our next classes were in opposite directions, so fortunately, I didn't have to walk with Noah. I maintained a normal appearance until I rounded the corner and sprinted to the office. I immediately told the story about Noah. I had no other choice, and this was truly dangerous. Less than a minute later, the lockdown alarm was activated. I watched from the office as people started screaming and running in a panic, looking for the nearest room to hide in. The police arrived shortly after and searched the school for Noah, but he wasn't there. It turned out Noah had run home as soon as the lockdown started. I guess he knew I was the one who reported him. Afterward, Noah was arrested at his house. When everything settled down, I sat alone in the office, stunned by what had just happened. I had saved everyone. I knew that. But deep down, I couldn't stop thinking about Noah. I felt guilty for him and angry at all the bullies who had pushed Noah to the edge. But I was also terrified of what might have happened if I hadn't spoken up. Since then, I have never heard or seen Noah again. I don't know how long he was in juvenile detention, but he will certainly never return to the school he intended to attack. Seeing the stories on the news about how many students have lost control because of bullying and done unthinkable things, I believe that many people could have been hurt if I hadn't acted. I and the students in that class have graduated and entered adulthood. No one knows what really happened to Noah. To this day, I still live in fear that he will one day seek me out for revenge. Gray is a cool, classy man who's got it all together. He's crashing at some fancy hotel with his hot young girlfriend. They've been a thing for like 2 years now. I'm so over this, Gray. I want a wedding everyone's gonna be jealous of, Gray's girlfriend whines. I've still got a ton of legal stuff to deal with my wife. Plus, I want to be there for my 2 boys, Gray says. The girlfriend's always bugging Gray for being his official wife. Gray's always acting like he's this big family guy, but he's constantly coming up with excuses to keep his girl happy on the side. That's it. The girlfriend grabs her phone, ready to call Gray's wife and stir things up. The two get into it, and things totally blow up. We're done, Gray says, all cold and serious. He opens the door and walks out, looking totally white. Gray grabs a cab to head home. He's trying to figure out what to tell his wife about getting home so late. When Gray looks back, the familiar city street turns into some random, empty road by the edge of the woods. You sure this road goes to the place I'm trying to get to? Gray asks, all worried. Chill out, this is a shortcut, the driver says, sounding pretty cold. Gray notices the driver keeps staring at him in the rearview mirror. His rough face and beard totally freak Gray out. 5 minutes later, the car is totally silent, and it's giving him the creeps. From the driver's cold stare to the empty road getting even quieter, Gray starts feeling more and more uneasy. Why'd he pick this road? A thought pops up, and then he feels a wave of anxiety. The driver suddenly slams on the brakes, gets out to make a call, and Gray's just sitting there all confused. Gray rolls down the window to listen in. The stuff's here. When are you gonna be here? I don't have all day, the driver says, kinda annoyed. Gray's sitting in the car, trying to make sense of everything, but he's freaking out. What the heck is he even talking about? How he talks about goods makes Gray realize he may be in serious trouble. Am I the goods? The question keeps popping up in his head, freaking him out. He's about to dip, but then he realizes the car door's locked, which makes Gray even more sure he's right. Gray's heart's racing, panic's creeping in, but at the same time, his survival instinct kicks in big time. Out of nowhere, Gray spots this small, pale yellow thing on the car floor. It is the driver's license. He looks at the photo in the car, and it definitely doesn't look like the driver. Right then, Gray's 100% sure he's the thing the driver was talking about. I gotta figure out how to get out of here, Gray mutters, and right then, the driver comes back to the car. Gray's freaking out, torn between wanting to escape this mess no matter what, and being scared of what he might have to do next. The second the driver gets in, Gray grabs the pen from his shirt and starts jabbing him in the neck. Once he's sure the driver's out cold, Gray grins like a maniac, showing off his red teeth. This feels awesome. The rush of taking the driver out totally takes over. Gray isn't the classy, successful guy he used to be anymore. After struggling for a bit to drag the driver's body to the back seat, Gray's about to drive off when a car comes flying at him from the other way. 2 guys, all dusty and rough-looking, step out of the car. Come on, bring this stuff over here, one of them yells. Gray figures this is the driver's deal. After a few seconds of thinking it over, Gray just goes for it and plays the driver. In the trunk, hurry up. A guy quickly walks up, pops open the trunk, and inside is the body of a moose, a pretty rare animal. Gray gets it now. He looks at the 2 guys with a blank stare, slowly pulling out that pen from earlier. While the other guy's checking out the surroundings, he spots a dark shadow inside the car. How the hell would a 4th person know about this? He grumbles, walking over to open the door. The empty road by the forest suddenly fills with loud, scary screams. About 20 minutes later, Gray drives off in the two guys' car, leaving the taxi with 3 bodies crammed inside. It's almost 3 a.m., and Gray's speeding down the street like it's no big deal. He's in a daze, heart racing, foot slammed on the gas, just laughing like a maniac, all pumped up. After 2 days on the run, Gray gets busted by the police while he's just stopping at a convenience store to grab something. "You're under arrest for murder, Mr. Taylor." But the victim the police are talking about isn't the 3 guys dealing in rare animals. It is Gray's girlfriend. So that night, Gray ended up taking 4 lives. When they arrest him, facing the cops, Gray doesn't feel scared like he did before. Instead, a little grin shows up on his face, like he's loving the end of a game he totally nailed. From being scared and freaked out, he slowly starts feeling good, like a rush, enjoying making someone stop breathing. He doesn't care about regret or what happens next. To him, it is all just a game, and he is the one calling the shots. The crazy villain gets slapped with a life sentence and no chance of parole. I'm writing this from room 314 at Lima State Hospital in Ohio. They say I'm delusional, but I know what I went through was real. My name is Ellie. I'm 26. 3 months ago, I was a waitress at a diner. I rented a small apartment on Oak Street near Riverside Park. Everything was quiet until he showed up. The first time I noticed him was when he came in as a customer at the diner. He was tall, thin, and around 30 years old. Always wore a white shirt and khakis. He would just sit there and watch me while I worked. I tried to ignore it, but he came back every single day, always at the same time and in the same booth. He would always stare at me with unblinking eyes. I started to feel uneasy. After 2 weeks, the messages started appearing. First, it was a small piece of paper tucked under my car's rearview mirror. The handwriting was neat. "The blue sweater looks good on you." I had worn a navy blue sweater that day. It could just be a coincidence. I threw the note away. The second message appeared, taped to my bedroom window. "Your pink socks are very cute." I looked down at the socks on my feet and shuddered. I called the police, but what I reported wasn't convincing enough. The police promised to patrol the area more often. I started becoming sensitive to every single noise. I installed extra locks and kept the curtains tightly drawn. Things gradually escalated. One evening I got home after a late shift and found my trash can had been knocked over in front of my door. Garbage was scattered all over the hallway. I just had to clean everything up in frustration. I didn't dare stay home alone anymore. I asked Tom, my friendly neighbor, for help. Tom was handsome and lived alone in the apartment across the hall. "Ellie, you should call the police," Tom said when I told him everything. I was grateful for Tom. He was the only person who believed me. The next day, when I opened my door, a dead sparrow was lying right on the doormat. Next to the bird's body was a piece of paper with the words, "You can't escape." I quickly backed into the apartment, shakily locked the door, and then sank to the floor. That evening, I woke up to a noise from the kitchen. It sounded like someone was opening the refrigerator. My heart started to pound. I grabbed my handgun and crept down the hallway. There was a shadow moving in the kitchen. "I have a gun!" I shouted, my voice trembling. The shadow stopped. Then it slowly turned around. It was him again. He stood in my kitchen, holding a bottle of water and smiling at me. "Hello, Ellie." I hated that face, furious at that gentle, casual, yet haunting attitude. I pointed the gun straight at him decisively. "Shut up." Right after my shout came the deafening sound of the gunshot. He fell. Blood spread across the kitchen floor. I stood there gasping, staring at the motionless body for a few minutes. When I realized the situation, I trembled as I reached for the light switch. I screamed with all my strength at the sight before me. The person lying there was not him, it was Tom. Blood was pouring non-stop from his chest. Tom's eyes looked at me with surprise and pain. "Ellie." I heard a noise. Thought someone. Tom gasped. I knelt beside him, my hands shaking as I pressed down on the wound. "Tom, I'm sorry. I didn't know," I thought. Tom tried to say something, but blood filled his mouth. Then his eyes slowly glazed over. I called an ambulance, but it was too late. Tom died from massive blood loss. The police arrived. They found no signs of forced entry. I told them about the stalker, the messages, and everything I had endured recently. But when the police checked, their answer was still that they found no evidence. Stress can make people do things they don't realize. You might have written those letters yourself during a period of high anxiety without knowing it. Psychiatrist told me, "No, I'm not crazy. He was real. He was in my kitchen," I yelled. But no one believed me. The only person who believed me was the one I had killed. I was taken to Lima State Hospital. They gave me medicine, made me participate in therapy sessions. They said I would get better if I accepted the truth. Last night, I looked out the window of my room and saw him standing in the yard. The same white shirt, the same khakis. He looked up and smiled. I called the nurse, but when they looked outside, there was nothing there. "You're having delusions again, Ellie. Take your medicine and rest," the nurse said. "But I know he's still out there." My name is Mia, and I'm 22 years old. I work as a cashier at a Shell gas station in Texas. The station is located in the middle of a huge field. There are a few cars during the day, but after midnight, it's like a ghost town. I usually work the day shift from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. Jack works the afternoon shift, and Tom is in charge of the night shift. But that day, Tom called in sick and couldn't come to work. He asked me to cover for him. I agreed without knowing that it would be the most terrifying night of my life. Jack handed over the afternoon shift to me at 10 p.m. He reminded me to lock the storeroom door carefully because a few kids had been causing trouble in the back last week. I was a little nervous because it was my first time working the night shift. The first 2 hours passed normally, with a few trucks stopping for gas and soda. I sat behind the counter reading a magazine, listening to the soft country music from the radio, which made me feel less lonely. Around 2 a.m., when everything was completely quiet, I heard a scratching sound from the back. The sound was like claws scratching wood. I looked up and listened, guessing it was the raccoons looking for food again. Raccoons are very common in Texas and often rummage through trash cans for leftovers. Our gas station is located near the woods, so this happens often. Usually, I just make a loud noise, and they get scared and leave. I yelled to scare them away as usual, but the scratching only stopped for a few seconds and then started again. I was a little nervous because this had never happened before. I yelled louder, but the scratching not only didn't stop, it became more frantic. Then I heard a completely different sound, a loud banging, as if someone was punching the drywall repeatedly. No raccoon could make that sound. A scary thought crossed my mind. Someone was in the storeroom. I slowly stood up, my eyes fixed on the door leading to the storeroom in the back. My mind told me I should immediately lock the front door and call the police, but a part of me thought I might be overreacting. Maybe it was just a homeless person looking for shelter. Curiosity mixed with a little pride made me want to check the situation myself. I slowly walked to the storeroom door and pushed it open slightly, making a soft creaking sound. The scratching stopped completely. The air suddenly became tense. Although I hadn't seen anything inside yet, I already felt a sense of regret Suddenly, the door burst open. In the dim light, I saw the figure of a man stumbling out. His appearance made me want to scream, but no sound could come out. His hair was messy and dirty, and his clothes were tattered, covered in black stains. But the scariest thing was his face. His skin had deep scratches. His eyes were wide, and his gaze was wild like a hungry animal. His mouth was wide open, revealing his yellowed teeth. He ran straight at me with insane speed. My survival instinct suddenly kicked in. I turned around and ran straight for the front door, running with all my might. Behind me, he was chasing me. I didn't dare to look back. Suddenly, a police car was parked right in front of the gas station door. 3 police officers were getting out of the car. I ran straight toward them. "Help me! There's a stranger in the storeroom!" I yelled. 2 officers quickly drew their guns and went inside the store. 1 officer stayed behind to reassure me. "Calm down, we'll take care of it." A driver passing by here called the police. He saw a person acting strangely behind the gas station. From the description, it seemed like he was trying to dig through the wall. Right then, the shouts of the 2 officers rang out. The man was now completely aware of the police's presence, but instead of surrendering, he decided to run. He ran toward the back door of the gas station, trying to escape into the woods behind. The 2 officers immediately chased after him. It didn't take long for them to catch up and restrain him. The intruder's final screams rang out and then sank into silence. "Suspect is in custody," one of the officers reported over his radio. After that terrifying incident, I took a few days off to get my head straight. The owner also called a repairman to patch the hole in the wall behind the storeroom. He also decided to install more security cameras and motion sensor lights around the area. Since that night, there have been no more break-ins at the gas station. I have not agreed to work any night shifts for any reason ever again. It was so lucky that someone noticed in time and called the police. I'm grateful, but also a little sad that I don't know who they are to thank them. I grew up in this old apartment complex on the south side of Chicago, where the walls were always peeling and everything smelled like mold. My grandma took care of me from when I was 10, after my parents moved on and started their own lives. We had this tiny 3rd-floor apartment, and we always kept the windows shut to keep the cold out. Back in the day, the complex used to be full of people, but over time, it turned into this rundown place, mostly just families struggling to get by. I never thought it was nice or anything, but at least it was safe and quiet. The basement was like a whole different world. Long hallways, those flickering fluorescent lights, and rusty metal doors no one wanted to mess with. The air down there was thick with mold, cigarette smoke, and this awful stench that made your stomach turn. Sometimes you'd hear whispers behind the doors, like shady deals going down. First time I ever went down there was when I moved in with her. Curiosity turned into this creepy obsession that stuck with me for years. I saw this dark figure with these huge eyes all distorted, and this sound coming from its mouth that made my ears ache. I didn't run. I crawled out of there, too freaked out to even make a sound. Behind me, I could hear this weird knocking, fast and slow, mixed with the screams of that freaky creature. I never went back down to the basement. I just lived with the fear, never told anyone, and somehow figured out how to deal with it. I begged my grandma to get me a radio, and whenever I was home, it was always on and right next to me. At night, I cranked it up loud, letting the stories and songs drown everything out and help me fall asleep. Other than that, life was pretty chill, at least until I turned 15 and the radio broke. I hadn't gotten around to fixing it yet. One night, while I was doing my homework in my room, I heard it, the knocking from the basement. It was steady, 3 beats over and over. I covered my ears, shaken, but I got it. 3 taps, 1 short, 3 quick taps, 1 long, then 3 slow taps. I stopped freaking out and actually listened, my whole body tight with nerves. It was an SOS signal. I remembered it from that last field trip. My heart was pounding so hard I thought I might be imagining it. But then it came again, loud and urgent. I bolted into the kitchen where my grandma was making hot soup. "There's someone in the basement. They're sending an SOS." My voice was shaky as hell. She didn't say a word, just quietly grabbed the phone and called the cops. My grandma never froze up when things got real. 10 minutes later, the flashing lights from a patrol car lit up our living room window. Me and my grandma stood in the hallway, looking down as 2 cops started knocking on every basement door. No one answered. One of them shined a flashlight through the crack of the last door at the end of the row, then gave a signal to the other. They busted the door down. A scream tore through the basement, and one of the cops shouted that they found someone. I froze, gripping my grandma's hand tight. A few moments later, they brought out a girl, maybe just a couple years older than me. She was wrapped in a police blanket, her skin pale, curled up tight, wrists covered in deep marks from being tied up, eyes wide with panic, like a trapped animal. The cops asked her name, but she couldn't really talk, just this broken whisper. After what felt like forever, she finally forced out 2 words, shaky and soft. "Emily Carter." The name sent chills down my spine. I'd seen it on a poster at the bus stop down the street. They switched those posters out every month, always showing some sad-looking faces. Been like that for the past 5 years. Emily Carter, a girl who went missing when she was 19. Her family searched everywhere, and social media blew up with the news. Plus, the cops found a bunch of old papers covering the walls in that room. Newspaper clippings about Emily's disappearance, old photos of her from years back, even letters she'd sent to her friends that someone had been holding on to. In the days after, the cops started digging deeper to figure out who kept Emily locked up in that dark basement room for the past 5 years. At first, they thought it might be this middle-aged guy who used to live in the building, some weird, lonely dude no one in the neighborhood really paid attention to. But the investigation uncovered something even more terrifying. George Miller, the building owner, the guy everyone knew. He seemed like a nice dude, always checking the pipes, collecting rent, helping old folks carry their groceries upstairs. No one would have guessed that right beneath us, in that dark basement, George had created a living nightmare. He didn't use force to make Emily disappear. He didn't snatch her off the street in broad daylight or break into her room at night. He used trust. That day, Emily was heading home from college when it started pouring. He happened to drive by and offered her a ride back to her apartment. Why would she have any reason to doubt him? But when his car stopped, Emily never got the chance to get out. He had it all planned out. A room in the basement, door locked tight, walls sealed. He didn't want to kill her or hurt her. He wanted to keep her forever. But George couldn't control Emily's mind. 5 years went by, and she remembered every quiet moment, every sound from outside. Her strength got her freedom and put George behind bars, where he belonged. Emily's family took her somewhere new to start over. Me and my grandma packed up and left too. It haunted me, knowing I lived right above the room where Emily was trapped all those years. The thing I had feared and avoided for so long wasn't some monster. It was a girl who had suffered more than anyone should,